Assalamu alaikum guys. In this video, we will start a new series called Laravel packages, and in this series, I will explain a useful Laravel packages that help you to make your development easier. So let's start. As we can see here, we will work today on Laravel Excel, which used for Excel files, CSVs, to maybe export and download reports and using them maybe for statistics and so on. So let's start using documentation. By the way, the URL here, laravel-excel.com, and go to documentation and go to installation here. And here using Composer require Mat website Excel here, we will install this package. I already installed it on my project, right? So no need to install it again. And by the way, it's auto-discovered. So if you use a previous Laravel version or old Laravel version, you may use to add this class or this service provider to your app.php, right, under config. Also the same for Excel facade. If you want to publish its configuration, we must use this command, and I used it also, and it generates a new file called Excel.php, right, as we can see here, Excel.php under config folder, and also for app.php under config folder again, we have Excel. Actually, I didn't add them because I'm using Laravel 10. So let's start. First of all, this part or this package divided into two parts. The first one is exports that we will talk about, and in the next video, inshallah, we will talk about imports. So let's start with exports. If we go here, we can generate a new Excel export using make export command here. And by the way, I have a table called customers, right? And I will take it as example to apply this package. So in my controller here, I have two methods, export and import, and I want to generate a new export, right, called customer export. So here, PHP artisan export, customer export, and I want to specify the model, which is customer, right? And now it's exported under app exports. So if we back here, our app folder, and we have exports, new file called customer export, and by default, it implements an interface called from collection to use this data to be exported. So we can go here, and if we want to export and download all of our customers, we can use collection because this interface here implements a method called collection. And now to export this using Excel file, we can say here Excel and download, and the export class we want to export. So I will say here new customer export, this class customer export, right? And the name of the file, I will say customers.xlsx, which is Excel extension, Microsoft Excel. So if I go here and visit my app/export, and now it will be downloaded as customers.xlsx here, right? And if we open this file here using Google Sheets, which supports also Microsoft Excel, I will say upload here, customers. We may need to refresh or open it using another way here. Yes, as we can see here, it exports all of our customers, same like our database. And don't worry if you noticed it looks so ugly. So in next few minutes, we will learn how to style it, right? So here is the very basic usage of this package, exporting all data directly, which is looks bad practice. So imagine if we have millions of rows, it will be slow, right? And they may crash. So the next feature here, if you noticed, it's by default export from collection and implement a collection and then download, right? And also we can store, not only download. So if we go here and I will say store instead of download, and I will use my local disk instead of S3 here, I will say local, right? So if I go back again here, and I will say customers local, and reload this page, it's stored, I think. If we back again here to our a storage folder, storage, and app. And as we can see, it's stored directly inside app folder under storage. So we can specify the folder also public slash here app slash public to be stored inside public folder, right? So I will remove it here, remove it from here, and I will try again. So back under public, here it's stored as customers local and it works correctly, right? So we can store or download. Also, you can use array by implementing from array interface, and let's implement it here. For example, I will say here, instead of from collection, I will say from array, right? And we can say here array method, yes, array, and it returns array. And also we may say return customer all, and we can use to array method because it's collection, right? So if we back again, and I will say here download as customer array, right? And if we back and refresh again, it will be downloaded. I will open it using Apple. Actually, I don't know why Google Sheets doesn't work. And yes, the same results here as we can see, right? From array. Let's move to another part, which is export formats. So you can save it as Excel or CSV or HTML or PDF or anything you want to, by just changing this third parameter and file extension, right? So I want to maybe download it as a CSV. So I will say here customers.csv and right type here will be CSV, right? Now saved, it's back and reload here. Reload the CSV. If we open it, and here same result. If you notice, CSV by default takes the first line as header. Also, it can download as HTML using these parts here. So copy, and let's see, reload, open, and as you can see here, HTML table, right? The next part here is something called exportable trait. So we can use this trait for using the class directly instead of using this facade. So if we go here again, and I will say use exportable, right? And I will say instead of that, here, return new customer export, and then we can say download because it implements this exportable trait. So I can say here customer trait maybe .xlsx, and if I back and refresh again, the same results, open, and no difference. And if we go inside this exportable trait here, we will say I think it may contains yes, as you can see here, we can define the file name here and right type and headers also here. So we can say here exportable, sorry, inside export here, we can say public file name equal to, for example, define or customers name .xlsx. And if we go back here, and I will remove this parameter here, I think it's mentioned also in this documentation. Yes, it must be private, by the way, not a public. So I will set it to private and back refresh. As you can see, customer's name here, right? The next thing here about exports is from query. So instead of from collection or from array, we can say here from query and writing normal Laravel query. So if we go back here, I will say from query, right? And here it must need query method, because if we open it, we must implement the query method. It must be builder, eloquent builder, or relation. And I will say here query, right? And I'll say return, or return a customer query. We can add, for example, where anything, for example, we're here status, or where name equal to Ahmed only. And if we back here and check, it must export only first user according to this where query, right? And if I back here and reload, download and check, only one row. Also, we can use it to set a parameter, by the way, as a constructor here. So we can say, for example, instead of defining everything inside our export class, we can use construct here. So I will say function and construct here, right? And string name, and here we can say public using PHP8 public string name, and I will say here this name. And if we want to use it, I can use here name Ahmed, passing parameter, and it will lead to the same result. So if I refresh and download again and see the file again, the same row. Let's move to next part here from view. So we can create or export an Excel file using Blade. So if I go here, we must implement this interface also. So we can say here from view, this one, from view, and if we open it, we must implement this method here. And I will say here, instead of that, let's do this, and it must return view, and I will say customers here, and I want to pass customers here, customers, right? And I want to say customers equal to customer model where name equal to Ahmed, get, and I want to create this customer Blade here. So we must call this class. I think if we open it, it must be contractive view. Yes, I will use it here also. Now it must work. If we go to our Blade files, I will create a new one here called customers.blade.php, and I will use this predefined code here as a table, right? And instead of invoices, I will say customers. So here, customer. So let's back and see, reload, works, open, and same result, name and email, right? After that, we can move to queued, and this is very important actually. So it's good for, as it's mentioned here, a lot of data or big data, big amount of data. So we can run it as a queue here, and we must implement should queue like listeners. So we can say here, instead of or beside this thing here, I will say from query and should queue, to use queues, right? And here we must implement our query again, and let's remove it. I will say return, or actually let's make it directly here, return, and remove it, and remove it also, right? And if we use it, we must use, as mentioned here, we must use queue, right? So we can say here back, and instead of the download directly, we can say queue, and it takes file path. This queue, by the way, stores file, right? So if we open our worker here, so artisan queue work, right? And I will say queued customers dot xlsx. Imagine we have a big amount of data, and if I open here and refresh, reload, yes, the problem is in the response. So I will say, for example, here instead of return, I will say return. Okay, right? So if we back and refresh again, it works, and here's our jobs also done. So if we open here our storage folder, queued customers, as we can see here, queued customers, and it works also. So it's useful for big amount of data, maybe 10,000 or even 100,000, 1 million, and so on. It's very useful to use queue, and the right choice here is using queue, and it will work in background if you work with Horizon or any other queue driver, right? So here also some other data or options you can use with queue. You can read about them, but I should use a main idea. And here for multiple sheets, I didn't use it before actually, so I will move to mapping data, which is very important part, by the way. So mapping data is used for, as name suggests, maybe formatting data, right? So for example, here if I open this, I will say here download. I want to say, by the way, here query, right, to download all users, and I will say return here. Let's back and refresh. Queued customers, okay. For example, I want to use the first users, right? And also instead of this time format, I want to change it to be only year, month, day, and formatting this data. So here is the purpose of map method. So we will copy it here. I will say for each customer, for example, if I open it, right, and map, we must say here, I will remove short queue with mapping, which implements here row, each row, formatting of each row. So our first row here, which is ID, right? So instead of ID, I want to select, I will say select here, name, email, and created at only, right? And for name, I will say here for each customer, you see first customer name, and email will be like this, the same email, right? And for created at, I will say here customer created at, because by default it costs as carbon format YMD. And if I back again and refresh our page, open here, and as we can see, user first letters are capital, and here's our date format. Here's the difference from old versions. So if I expand, actually here, if I expand it, looks meaningless actually, or has unnecessary details, but after mapping data, now it looks like this by using with mapping interface. Also, if we want to maybe adding some headers to be the head of our page, we can implement with headings. So I can say here, comma, with headings, right? And it implements headings array. So we can say here, function headings, and it must return array, and I will say return name, email, and created at semicolon. And if I refresh, check again, and now here our headers, name, email, and created at, right? So let's continue here with customizing columns. So the only thing here actually about this one here is what I use is auto sizing. So for example, if we open here again, you can see it looks a little bit bad actually, this data here. So for example, email doesn't completely appears. So instead of that, we can say here should auto size as mentioned here. So let's try it. Should auto size, back and re-download it again. As we can see here, it's auto sized. Also, we can set the width automatically for each cell, and then we have settings. So this settings contains inside Excel.php file. There's a method called properties. So here is this properties. I think it's related to a page configuration. I didn't use it before actually, but I think it works with the metadata of worksheet, right? And also for drawings, if you want to add maybe for very advanced usage actually, for adding PNGs and logos inside your worksheet or Excel sheet. And here is whole interfaces and maybe traits you will want to use. Here's quickly how to use export and Laravel Excel package. Inshallah, in next part we will explain about importing. If you found it useful, support me by clicking on like, share and subscribe. See you in next videos.